I want to give a shout out to my friends who have made the trip. And there are a lot of you here, and I love you, and I appreciate that. We have somebody from Tennessee, somebody from Virginia, somebody from Illinois. We even have a Canadian. We got a Canadian here. And we have people from Ypsilanti to Howell to St. Clair Shores. So thank you very much. If you were a part of last year's keynote, the book really spoke to surrounding yourself with the right people. And the phrase that really stuck with me was something very simple. You show me your friends, I'll show you your future. It's about as good as it gets there. And so I just want to give a shout out to my friends that made it. Wendy Caverly, thank you very much. Dan Glazer, Nick Monty, Eileen, thank you for getting that. Kristen Koch, where'd you go? There you go, honey. Hey, Steve Battelle, Catherine Krieger, Matt Pastor, my newest and one of my favorite friends. Thank you very much. Aaron Kurtz, thanks for making the trip. Sarah Schultz, what you do is remarkable. If you don't know anything about what Safe House does, please get to learn about what Safe House does. It'll make your hearts well. And last but not least, Tim Rice. Thank you very much. Okay, and by the way, thank you very much for that Bruce Lee quote. That actually was in my first book. Okay, so it is very, very good to be here, and I want to begin with a very simple question. Have you ever looked back at a decision and said, what was I thinking? I know I have, probably more times than I care to admit. Sometimes it's something small. It could be a tiny email. It could be a conversation, a purchase, a reaction which you could take back. Sometimes it's even bigger than that. A relationship, a career move, a missed opportunity,
investment,
a season of life, a road you chose, or maybe a road you didn't choose. We've all had those moments where we honestly wonder, what was I thinking? And that's exactly why I chose that title for this third book. When I started writing it, I thought I knew where it was going. I believed I was writing a book about decision making. Good decisions, bad decisions, how we make them, how we recover from them. It seemed pretty straightforward, but something unexpected happened. The book refused to cooperate. It did. I would finish a chapter, read it, and realize it wasn't saying what I thought it was saying. At first, I blamed the outline. And then I blamed the editor. And then ultimately I had to blame myself. I realized the book wasn't going to change. The book wasn't changing at all. I was changing. The more I wrote, the more I realized this really wasn't a book about decisions. It had quietly become a book about wisdom. And as I wrestled with that idea, I kept coming back to a verse that I've loved for years. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it costs all you have, get understanding. Proverbs 4:7. I love that verse because it doesn't say, wait until you're older. It doesn't say, hope wisdom finds you. It doesn't even say, pray that somebody gives you wisdom. It simply says, get wisdom. Pursue it. Seek it. Value it. And somewhere in the middle of writing this book, I realized that was the message I've been trying to write all along. Not make better decisions, but become a wiser person. Because wiser people naturally make better decisions. You know, for 30 years I had the privilege of sitting across the table from people making some of the biggest decisions of their lives. Retirement, business, families, legacies. And over all of those years, I noticed something that honestly puzzled me. Some of the smartest people I have ever met make some of the worst decisions I've ever seen. And some of the people with very little formal education consistently made some of the best decisions I've ever seen. So, let's see here. Intelligence wasn't the answer. Money wasn't the answer. Age wasn't the answer. I kept asking myself, what separates them? Eventually, I realized this. It wasn't information. It was a process. Mature people don't simply collect more information, they develop better ways of thinking. As I worked through the manuscript, I found myself seeing 3 different types of decision-making processes. It would be linear, iterative, and intuitive. Sometimes we think linearly. We gather facts. We compare options. We build spreadsheets. I know some of you here are remarkable spreadsheet builders. I know that. Some decisions deserve exactly that. A spreadsheet is a wonderful way to compare, hey, you Edward Jones guys, retirement plans, investments. Spreadsheets are beautiful for that. It's a terrible way to choose a spouse. Other decisions are iterative. As many of you know, I love golf. Nobody fixes a golf swing by reading one chapter in a book. You hit the ball, you shank, you learn. You hit the ball, you shank, you learn. And then you just rinse and repeat. Failure isn't interruption. Failure is instruction. Iteration is exactly how you learn to play golf. It's probably not how you should decide whether to have children, though. Right? Some things in life have got to be better than, no, we'll just figure it out as we go. That's not the best strategy. Then there are decisions which are just intuitive. Those moments when experience begins to recognize patterns before your conscious mind has completely explained them. People call it instinct. I think it's earned and learned experience. Intuition is a wonderful thing. When you've spent 30 years in an industry and you've seen the same patterns hundreds of times over, it is probably not the best way to decide if your surgeon is qualified. You can't say, I got a good feeling about that guy. It's not enough. The challenge isn't deciding which one is best. The challenge is recognizing which process the decision requires. Wisdom isn't mastering one process. Wisdom is discerning which process the decision requires. One of the tools that's helped me tremendously in a pinch is something that I call 10-10-10, the 10-10-10 rule. Whenever emotions start making decisions for me, I stop and ask myself 3 questions. How will I feel about this in 10 minutes? How will I feel about this in 10 months, 10 years? Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. For about 10 minutes, you're convinced this is the greatest threat to civilization. That guy will cut me off. 10 months later, you completely forgot about it. 10 years later, 10 months later, you completely forgot about it. 10 years later, the moment doesn't even exist. Sometimes all wisdom needs, this should be a bumper sticker. Sometimes all wisdom needs is enough time to catch up with emotion. That brings me back to my favorite word in this book. It's called SALAH, S-A-L-A-H. It means 3 words: pause, reflect, and repair. I become convinced that mature people aren't necessarily the quickest to respond. They're often the slowest to respond. They create that space between what happens and how they respond. And somewhere inside that space, wisdom actually has room to speak. People occasionally ask me, hey Adam, how did you become who you are today? Now you smile, say, and maybe they're expecting something remarkably pontificated. Maybe they expect me to say something about education, experience, or success. Instead, I tell them something like this. Much simpler. I made a lot of good decisions. Then I usually add this. And I learned how to make good decisions because I made a lot of crappy decisions. That realization eventually came something that I call the cycle of thought, and it works like this. Everything begins with a question. And once you question it, you will learn, and you will try something. You will question, learn, try, and you're going to fail. And that cycle continues and exists. Ultimately, you will succeed. But here's the step that we skip far too often. We don't share it. Selfish us. We don't share it. Because the moment, I love this part, when we share what we've learned, our experience becomes somebody else's starting point. Think about that for a minute. Don't hoard it. I get goosebumps. When I was practicing this morning, I just got goosebumps talking about it. Life asks another question, and the cycle begins again and again and again. The pursuit of wisdom never really ends, and neither should your curiosity. One of my biggest decisions of my own life just came a few years ago. I had spent 25 years building a career that I genuinely loved. I knew the business, I knew the people, I knew who I was. Then an opportunity came up that forced me to ask a very, very difficult question. Do I stay where I'm comfortable? Or do I become the person God may be calling me to become? I'll be honest with you. You know what? I wanted a spreadsheet. I wanted a formula. I wanted certainty. Who didn't want certainty? Instead, I had a conversation with people I trusted. I prayed. I reflected. I asked very hard questions. And eventually, I realized something. The decision wasn't testing whether I had enough information. It was testing whether I trusted the wisdom that I've been building over the past 25 years. And looking back, I don't think it was an absence. I don't think courage is the absence of uncertainty. I think courage is moving forward because wisdom has convinced you that it's the right direction. Even when certainty never shows up. Throughout this book, you will encounter one simple Latin word, sapio, S-A-P-I-O. I encourage all of you to look it up. Sapio means to discern, to understand, to be wise. For me, it's become more than a word. It becomes a reminder, not that I've become wise, but that I should never stop pursuing wisdom. Every single day, you have to pursue wisdom. Because maybe that's the real question. That's the real question. It isn't what was I thinking. Maybe life isn't asking us to spend our days regretting yesterday's decision. Maybe it's asking us to just ask better questions. Who am I becoming? I think that's the better question. Because every decision, good or bad, was made from the person we are in that moment. If we want better decisions tomorrow, we have to become wiser people today. And that's what that proverb says. The beginning of wisdom is this. Get wisdom, not someday, today. Not after you've made enough mistakes, today. Pursue wisdom because wisdom produces maturity. Maturity produces better decisions. But more importantly, tomorrow's decisions will be made by the person you're becoming today. Okay, before we finish, one final thing. As a part of today's event, I know Steve mentioned this, every one of you will receive a complimentary copy of What Was I Thinking?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
And I truly hope it encourages you to continue reflecting on the decisions you're making, the life you're building. In today's presentation, if all of this resonated with you, and you want to explore a little bit more, I'll be back here if you want to pick up a copy of the first book, What Am I Doing Here? Or the second book, which if you weren't here last year, see me back there. It was called What Am I Doing Here? And then, I put together, because after this third book came out, I put together a reader's guide. So if you want to see the common thread that weaves all of them together and get a look behind the scenes, certainly do that. I actually call it the Human Series. And so be sure to come back here later on and say hi to me. Say hi to my friends too. They should be your friends too.
Yes.
Okay. That's everything I wanted to share with you. And I love the word share, Steve, because that's what it was about. Continue to be curious about wisdom. Be students of people. I've been hearing that. I've been taking crazy notes, and this teleprompter is putting me in a box that I just can't stand. But you guys have remarkable stories. Share them. Steve, that's it. Guys, thank you.